Chapter 22. Merribeth. Merribeth arrived on the scene just as the ambulance did. Her heart sank as she saw both Chance and Lucas on the ground, and she raced to where they lay. No! Her knees folded beneath her when she reached them, and she fell to the street. Pain erupted in her hands and knees, but she barely registered it. What had happened? Mommy? Through the fog, threatening to overtake her, she heard Lucas's voice and lifted her head. He was alive? Did that mean Chance was too? Lucas? She hurried over to him. Ugly red scratches marred his beautiful face, but his eyes were open and looking at her. Are you okay? What happened? The words tumbled out of her mouth like cereal pouring into a bowl. I'm okay. I did what you told me to and poked the guy in the eye. He dropped me, though, and now I hurt. He moved as if he were going to try and sit up, and Merribeth gently placed her arm on him. Don't move, buddy. EMTs are on their way to check you out, but you need to stay still until they say it's okay. Next to her, Chance groaned and struggled to open his eyes. Merribeth. I'm here, Chance. Are you okay? She turned her attention to him, trying to visually assess his injuries, though she had no idea what she was looking for. I think it's my leg. There was a definite pain there before the world went dark. His hand reached for his leg, but before he even touched it, his eyes widened. Colin, did Dougie call the police? Dougie? She hadn't even noticed him, but she did now. He was just handing off the man in black to Austin Henderson, one of the local police officers who helped out at the lodge occasionally. I'll be right back, she said to Lucas and Chance as the EMTs reached them. I'm his mother, so please don't leave for the hospital without me, she said to the blonde, who nodded before kneeling down next to Lucas. Merribeth hurried over to Dougie and Austin. Wait, she called. I need to talk to him. Austin paused, but kept a tight grip on the man. Just a quick word, Merribeth. I need to get him booked. I don't need long. Just long enough to ask how a father could kidnap his own son. The man in black lifted his head, and Merribeth took a step back. That's not Colin. Who is that? Dougie wrapped a strong arm around her shoulder as Austin and his partner loaded the man in black into the back of the car. I'll let you know when I find out, Austin said, before climbing into the driver's side of the squad car. Are you sure that wasn't Colin? Dougie asked. I know he didn't look much like the picture you gave me, but it has been a few years. Could his appearance have changed? Empathy filled his chocolate brown eyes, but she shook her head emphatically. It might have been a few years since she'd seen him, but she'd been married to the man. She knew what he looked like. That wasn't him, Dougie. But why would anyone else want to steal Lucas? She had thought the idea of Colin trying to steal Lucas was bad, but this feeling was much, much worse. I don't know, but I promise you we'll find out. Ma'am, we're ready to load up over here. Are you coming? Merribeth looked to where the blonde EMT was waving her over. Go, Dougie said. I'll take care of things here. Merribeth nodded and hurried into the ambulance. It was a tight squeeze with both gurneys inside, but she managed to find just enough room to sit before the sirens filled the air and the ambulance headed toward the local hospital. This was certainly not how she'd imagined spending the evening. When they reached the hospital, she was ushered toward the nurse's station to fill out paperwork, while Chance and Lucas were examined. Can't this wait? She asked the stern-faced woman behind the desk. No, we need to have the medical information filled out. But I don't know all of this. Frustration was creeping into Merribeth's voice, and she took a deep breath to try and calm herself. Look, I just got the insurance 2 weeks ago. Can I give you the human resource person's name at my work? I'm sure she has this information. The nurse narrowed her eyes at Merribeth and opened her mouth as if to object again, but Merribeth didn't give her the chance. Please, It's my son in there, and he's only 5. That seemed to have an effect on the woman. "All right," she said with a sigh. "Write down the name and number, and I'll call them to get the information." "Thank you." Merribeth quickly scribbled down the information she knew and handed the papers to the woman. Then she hurried to the room Lucas was in. The doctor met her at the door. "Your son is fine, a few scratches and a mild concussion. We'd like to keep him overnight for observation, but he should be fine to go home tomorrow." Relief flooded Merribeth. "Can I stay with him?" "Sure. The couch in the room isn't the most comfortable, but you're welcome to stay. Your husband will also be kept for observation. It appears he developed a blood clot in his leg from his previous injury. We've got him on blood thinners, but we want to make sure there's no adverse reaction to them." Merribeth thought about telling him that Chance wasn't her husband, but that small detail seemed so unimportant with everything that was going on. Her boys were alive, injured, but alive. She sent up a thank you to God before thanking the doctor and continuing to Lucas's bedside. "How are you doing, buddy?" she asked as she took his hand. "My face and head hurt a little, but I'm okay." She smiled softly as she smoothed the hair from his forehead, careful to avoid the scrapes. "I'm so glad. You have to stay in the hospital tonight, but I'll be right here with you." He nodded, and then his lips pursed. "Mommy, who was that man, and why did he take me?" Merribeth shook her head and swallowed to keep the tears locked behind her eyes. "I don't know, buddy, but I promise you that I'll find out." It was after 9 before Lucas fell asleep, and Merribeth took the opportunity to sneak out of his room and check on Chance. She hoped he would understand why she hadn't come in earlier. The TV in his room played some news show quietly, but Chance's eyes were closed. She didn't want to disturb him, but she wanted him to know she'd stopped by, and she wanted to thank him. He'd risked his life to chase after Lucas, and the thought of what might have happened to him if Chance hadn't been there was too much to bear. "You can come in. I'm not asleep." Chance's eyes opened, and he tossed her a crooked grin. "You little faker," Merribeth said, swatting him lightly on the arm. With a speed she wouldn't have expected, his hand reached out and grabbed hers. "I had to make sure you got close enough that I could hold on to you." His smile widened as he tossed her a wink. "You saved my son. You don't have to trick me to hold my hand." Though she hadn't meant them to sound so sobering, they wiped the smile from Chance's face, and he held her hand against his chest. "How is he?" Merribeth sighed and sat on the edge of Chance's bed. As scared as she was, there was something about being near Chance that gave her strength. "Physically, he'll be okay. Mentally, I'm not so sure. He asked me why someone he didn't know would take him, and I didn't have an answer." Chance's expression folded in confusion. "What do you mean? I thought Colin took him." Merribeth shook her head. "It wasn't Colin. I don't know who that man was, or how he knew about us." Chance squeezed her hand tighter. "We'll find out, Merribeth, and I promise that I will be there every step of the way to protect him." "I appreciate that, Chance, but that might be a little challenging in your current condition." She flashed him a lopsided grin, surprised that she could tease at a time like this. "My legs might be a little slow for a few days, but don't underestimate my strength, woman." With that, he tugged on her arm until she fell against his chest. Merribeth smiled as her face stopped inches from his. "I'll never underestimate you again, Chance Overstreet." She wasn't sure exactly when the last of her wall had fallen. Maybe it was the day he began taking care of her. Maybe it was seeing him interact like a father with Lucas the last few days. Maybe it was watching him risk his life to save her son tonight. His eyes twinkled as he stared into hers. "Does that mean you'll finally go out with me again?" She couldn't help but chuckle. "Yes, I'll go out with you." He brushed a strand of hair back from her face. I'm sorry, but I don't think I heard you correctly. Did you say yes? She brought a hand up to caress his cheek. Yes, I said yes. And after what you've done for us, I'll spend as much time taking care of you as you need. I'm gonna need a lot of time, he said in a husky whisper as he pulled her closer. Maybe a lifetime of time. Her heart sped up as she caught the implication of his words. But before she could respond, his lips were on hers. Warmth exploded within her, radiating to every limb like a tidal wave. It wasn't the kiss she remembered. It was infinitely better. The last time they'd kissed, they had both been teenagers. Sure, they were in love, but with no idea of what love really meant. Now they were older, and they had experienced life and heartbreak. 8 years of unsaid words passed between them with that kiss, and Merribeth knew there was no turning back now. I better get back to Lucas, she said when the kiss ended. Her breath was uneven, and her head swam, but she knew if she didn't leave now, she might fall asleep, safe and secure in Chance's arms. While there might be a time for that in the future, right now she needed to be with her son in case he woke up in the middle of the night. Chance groaned in frustration, but she knew he understood. I'll be back for you in the morning, and Chance, thank you. The couch in Lucas's room was as uncomfortable as the doctor had claimed, but Merribeth barely felt the lumps as she replayed the kiss over in her mind. Christmas was still a few days away, but she was pretty sure she'd just gotten the best present ever.